This is Morning Express. It's now 7 o'clock Kenyan time, and it's time for us to go on the way it is. And just look at some of the things that have been happening, politically speaking, and what they mean and what impetus they may have on us as a country. And joining me in the studio as part of the panel, to my extreme left, we have Senator Moses Kajwang, Senator for Homa Bay County. Good to have you. Karibu sana.
Good morning.
Good morning. And thank you for joining us. We also have Ambrose Weda, who is a lawyer. Thank you for joining us too.
Thank you.
And later on, maybe we'll have Hassan Omar joining us. If not, we shall still continue with the debate. Now, just a quick reminder of the question this morning, and that is, are you in support of CORD's renewed effort to occupy IEBC? That's the main question. I'm going to be sampling some of your answers as we go along. But let me now come to the panel and start with you, Senator. And of course, we do know that Isaac Hassan came out and said that the commissioners are not about to quit because it would be setting a bad precedent. Whenever possibly the political class is unhappy with a certain institution, all they would need to do is make a lot of noise and harm them out of office. What are your comments to that?
I think the comments by Isaac Hassan were quite unfortunate for him to come out with the level of arrogance that he came out with. There's an interview that was published in the papers yesterday, particularly in the Sunday Standard,
yes,
where he goes ahead and says that IBC will stop CORD from participating in the elections. You know,
yes,
getting to that extent. He
actually quoted it and said it's more like intimidating the officers, which is against the law.
Yeah, but it is not a CORD issue, Mike, and it's important that IBC also opens its ears to listen to the concerns of many other stakeholders. Fine, CORD has pronounced itself on the matter. The National Council of Churches has also spoken on it. The Episcopal Conference of the Catholic Church has spoken on it. The Law Society, we've heard them talk about it. The trade unions have spoken about it. KANU, which is an affiliate of the Jubilee Alliance, have spoken about it. It is not an issue of Odinga versus IBC. It is an issue of a cross-section of Kenyans who feel that the IBC does not have the credibility or the impartiality that is required for it to be a referee in the next elections. And sometimes it is not always a legal or constitutional questions. So some of these things are political and also moral. If you look at the judiciary, the Chief Justice is leaving office in June. In fact, next month, we are not going to have Justice Mutunga as Chief Justice. He's leaving a year earlier because he does not want to subject the country to pressure. He does not want to subject the country to any crisis as a result of his succession. And he has decided to take a moral position and leave early. The IBC is now trying to hold on by the skin of their teeth, citing constitutional provisions. Yes, we know what the Constitution says, but it is the same Constitution that we tried following when we came up with the Okoa Kenya draft bill, which came up with significant proposals that would have reformed the architecture of our electoral system constitutionally. We saw what happened to that, and we saw the manner in which that process was infiltrated by politicians allied to the Jubilee coalition. So ultimately, there's a saying in Africa that when the gods want to destroy you, they first make you proud and arrogant. And we are seeing the pride and hubris coming out of the IBC is a first step and is one of the signs showing us that they are not going to survive this. Yeah.
All right, before I come to you, Ambrose Weda, and in support of what you have said, that it's not a CORD issue, and of course, then would want to ask IEBC why they would want to hold on to that office. But we've had several politicians come out, including some allied to Jubilee, and say they also do not want IEBC in office. And here are just some of the comments that have gone forth so far.
Tunataka referee awe ni yule hajaegemea upande wowote.
Hii IEBC hata sisi hatuitaki. Hatuitaki. Hii IEBC ni ya Raila. Wewe Sonko acha. Hata sisi hatuitaki. Lakini tufuate sheria. Leta mswada huko bunge, tuwatoe, tusikane tuende uchaguzi.
Ukitaka IEBC ni ya Wakenya wote. Kama unataka kwenda kupanga mkutano, nende upange mkutano. mkae mjadilia yale ambayo mko naye, nenda na mawakili wako, hakuna mtu atakuzuia. Lakini hiyo ya kwenda kujaribu kuvunja milango, hiyo hapana. Nataka, I want to be very clear, hiyo haiwezekani. Kama uko na shida unataka IBC ivunjwe iwekwe ingine, kuna taratibu ile ambaye katiba imeweka, fuata hiyo taratibu. Nani yako na shida?
So those are some of the comments that have been coming from both sides of the political divide. Weda, your comments on where we are as a country today. According to the president, the issue is not so much whether IEBC should be in office or not. The issue is how to remove them.
Yeah, I think the president is right. What CORD is trying to do, which is most unfortunate, they are trying to garner, to get traction for a euphoria for 2017. How do you get it? They tried through a referendum. Unfortunately, luck was not on their side. They didn't get the 1 million votes. That fell apart. Now I think they're trying to garner it through the removal, the attempted removal of IEBC. They know, and even Orengo knows, although I know maybe the law may have rusted in his head, but he knows the simple procedure of removing the IEBC commissioners is a question of putting a petition. And if you ask me, the bar is very low. The bar that they have to, the threshold they have to meet is very low, which is that they say these people are biased. And you see a bias or appearance of bias, all they need to do is to come and say, look, in Asa Kasan's affidavit in the Raila Odinga versus IEBC petition, he said I'm a perennial loser. That is ground one. That means he's not biased. He's not neutral. Number two, when we sought certain documents, he didn't give it to us in time. We had to go for a court order for them to be ordered to give it to us. That shows they are not neutral. Number three, they went into extraneous matters to oppose our petition like this. Therefore, we as a people think they would not be neutral. That is sufficient ground, especially when you get eloquent MPs like my brother here to go and argue the petition. You don't take firimbi into parliament, then you annoy people, then it is tossed out. So let us separate between trying to remove the IEBC commissioners and gaining traction. What they are doing is called gangsterism and Hitlerism, just to create chaos when they know the law says otherwise and the law provides. What they're doing is very wrong. What you people are doing is very wrong and is annoying.
Senator, we do know, if you went to a court of law saying that IEBC is biased just by perception would not hold any water. There needs to be proof, and that's what Issa Kassan has come out and said, that if you give us proof that we are biased or we are in cahoots with the government, we'll resign the next day. Is CORD willing to put their money where their mouth is and, provide what they say is, or their grounds for saying that IEBC is biased?
Once again, I don't want to fall into Issa Kassan's spin, where he personalizes the issue and makes it an Odinga versus IEBC. Issa Kassan goes and picks a very small aspect of something that was captured when Raila Odinga was interviewed by a TV station, where Raila said that he's got evidence that IEBC has got an arrangement with Jubilee. But that is not the ground upon which we are asking that the commissioners must step aside. There is a court of public opinion. And in politics, and people who hold a position like the IEBC commissioners, because they are referees of a political process. They are not referees of a religious or a business meeting. They are referees of a political process. So they must be weighed and they must be judged in the court of public opinion. And when you look at recent opinion polls, which, whenever it shows you are losing, Jubilee accepts, all of them consistently have shown that the IEBC is losing the trust and confidence of Kenyans. Is this the same body we want to proceed with? Look at the parliamentary initiative, and I'm happy that Weda can eloquently articulate the failings of IEBC. In fact, he has talked about the failings of IBC better than many of us talk about it. It is clear, it is evident that IBC has got significant questions around the morality of the commissioners, the capacity of the commission itself, and the impartiality of the entire commission. But going the parliamentary route, we know that there's this thing called tyranny of numbers, which is used every other time that Jubilee is not interested in something. In fact, sometimes you wonder if Jubilee was so serious about the 2/3 gender bill, why they did not marshal that tyranny of numbers to ensure that a bill sponsored by the leader of majority goes through. It tells you there is selective application of that tyranny of numbers in the National Assembly, such that even if a Kenyan took a petition, even someone like Weda, who has articulated 3 or 4 grounds as basis upon which IBC should go home, when that thing comes to Parliament, the National Assembly, unfortunately, it will not be an issue of reasoning. It will be an issue of settling political scores and saying that this is Jubilee versus CORD. That is the unfortunate bit. And Mike, we have not, it would be unfair to say that we have not attempted the constitutional route. The Okoa Kenya draft bill had got significant proposals on amendments or reforms to the electoral system. If that would have been allowed to proceed without interference from Sakaja and Aden Duale, who are now acting as if they are spokesmen of
Senator,
IBC.
do we have that there was interference? Because the grounds on which IEBC dismissed the Okoa was purely because it didn't meet the threshold of numbers, and there was redress that could have been sought by either CORD going back to the ground and getting more signatures. The threshold was very low. It was easy to actually raise those numbers.
No, Mike, just 2 days before IEBC made a statement, and just a few days after we had gone to IEBC to seek progress on Okoa Kenya, and the commissioners disappeared, and we only found the CEO and Mr. Kowie and a few other managers. The rest of the commissioners disappeared. 2 days after that, Aden Duale and Sakaja told the nation that CORD's Okoa Kenya bid has failed because they presented fake signatures. 2 days after that pronouncement by Duale and Sakaja, the IBC said the same thing that these two people said. How then would political actors, would the chairman of a political party, would the leader of majority in the National Assembly be privy to information coming from IBC, which is supposed to be independent and not just independent, which is supposed to be impartial? It tells us that they are games. We've attempted the constitutional approach. We have seen interferences along the way, and we are now going back to the people. Article 1 of the Constitution.
Okay, let me hear from Weda, because I see him shaking his head in disagreement with what you're saying.
You see,
what part do you disagree with, Weda?
One, these people know the right route of removing the IEBC.
But like Senator has articulated, they have tried.
They have not tried. They don't even have a quarter petition of 2 paragraphs. You know, you try the legal way, you go into Parliament. When you are defeated, then that's when you say, you see, there was tyranny of numbers. But when even Korea there says, even us, we don't want these people. Bring the petition. Now they don't want that because they want to dance in the street and break gates. That is very wrong. On the Okoa Kenya initiative, even one of the young, brilliant, and respected senators like Mutola Kilonzo Jr. said, you people did it in the wrong way and failed. I saw it in his tweet. In that one, you made a mistake. I say that 1 million signatures is like collecting 1,000 signatures in 1,000 polling stations. That is a massive work that you will see going on. These ones were just a few people in Dandora, some in, it was not even done in Homa Bay, where he comes from. Then they collected fake signatures, they break it. When that failed, they needed just to go back and say, is this why it has failed? Let us get the most signatures. What they are doing now is creating mayhem in the country. What is so difficult in filing a petition? Let's say the Jubilee tyranny of numbers, although when you lose something, you say tyranny of numbers. When you win something, you say, oh, Jubilee never won, they are a minority. When it is convenient, Jubilee is a majority. When it is not also convenient, it's a minority. Why can't you set down the ground, file the petition, and take it to Parliament? Okay. Let it be debated upon, and then let a decision be made. Then from there, you take the next initiative. It is not starting with the people, unless you just want the firimbi things.
Let me respond to that, because there are many players who are saying that IBC is impartial and IBC should go home. As a member of ODM, as a member of CORD, I resort, and at this particular moment, I believe that the most efficient and the most effective approach is to go back to the people and to the sovereign power of the people and to the constitutional right we have to demonstrate, to picket, and to petition public authorities. That is a route we have chosen. The church can do a petition. They are unhappy with the IBC. The trade unions can do a petition. It does not have to be CORD. CORD can take another route. We are going to the street. Let the trade unions do a petition and bring it to parliament. And let us see if this tyranny of numbers is not going to be abused the way it has always been abused.
And it is a constitutional right to picket and to do that. But then after you have done that, what goes on? Because the other question, of course, that one may ask is we have had issues with the electoral commissions all through, starting right from Kivui to coming down. Once we change the faces of these commissioners, will that really have sorted out the commission?
It is not just about change of face, and that is why I keep referring to the Okoa Kenya draft bill. And unfortunately, many Kenyans, and admittedly even political leaders, have not looked at it. Because within the Okoa Kenya draft bill, we came up with proposals that did not address just the composition of the commission, but it went into other reforms that we felt were necessary to ensure that the electoral infrastructure, systems, and processes were amended. So getting the commissioners out is not the end. It is just the beginning. But it is a beginning that is extremely important, because it signals to the nation that we are now in the process of putting in place fresh blood, new wine, and it gives people confidence. I tell you, there's certain aspects of the population in this country that are dejected. Their apathy arises from the fact that when they look at the people who sit in that commission, they give up and say, these guys are not going to give us a fair judgment. And that is very pervasive in Luoland and parts of the country, especially the county that I represent. People tell me, Mr. Senator, if we go into elections with this gentleman who made certain pronouncements following the last presidential elections, is it going to be a fair game? So changing the commissioners, first of all, we will be able to deal with the credibility issues, with the integrity issues. Don't forget, Mike, that the issue of Chicken Gate is still alive. You've got people who've been jailed in the United Kingdom for bribing officials of the then IIEC, of which the chair of the current IBC was part of. And yet in Kenya, we are still saying, we must do investigations. In defense of Isaac Hassan, he has said that the matter is with EACC. Yes.
And as a result, until EACC finish the investigations, really somebody is innocent until proved guilty.
It is a state-sponsored delay. State-sponsored.
Do we have evidence of that?
No, you are never going to get evidence that EACC has been told to go slow. But EACC has moved with great speed on very many other matters. This is a matter that has been investigated. People are in jail. Assets are being seized in the United Kingdom. What does that tell us about our own investigations and prosecutions in this country? It just tells you that maybe someone is under instructions to go slow on the matter because it has got significant political implications. And Isaac Hassan, surely, sometimes it's important to search your own heart and ask yourself, should the country burn because of my own ego? Should the country burn because I believe I understand the Constitution more than anybody else? I believe Isaac Hassan and his team are going to be out.
All right. I think let me clarify something. There is this wrong notion that people have a constitutional right to picket and to do what?
But is it not a constitutional right?
Let me explain.
It is.
Let me explain.
Okay.
You cannot pick a right and use it to subvert another provision of the Constitution. You actually forfeit that right the moment it is like you have a right to life. But when you kill, you subvert. Here, the Constitution itself says we have an IBC. This is the process of putting in people. This is the process of removing them. Okay? When you ignore that process that the Constitution provides, and you take the right to picket and apply it towards breaking down gates and trying to physically remove people from offices, you have forfeited that right. Let these people know this.
But it is still within the Constitution. If the other methods have failed, this is another method that can be used.
Now,
And this is to put pressure for them to quit, which is still within the Constitution for them to quit.
You see, unless, for instance, they are talking about sovereign right of the people. Now, when you talk about the people, you gather a few of your supporters, and then you call them the people. When Jubilee also gathers their supporters, and then say the people, you are actually heading the country into chaos, because these people will clash. That is why the same Constitution said, you may have a problem here. When you have a problem with the IEBC, follow this process. When you have a problem with the president, follow this process. When you have a problem with a senator like him, follow this process. Now, when you ignore those processes, and I think I'd start saying today, we don't want the senator of Homa Bay. So we have to eject him from Homa Bay and also eject him from the Senate. We will be subverting the Constitution. And therefore, you cannot rely on the same Constitution you're subverting to say, this is my right. That people know. There should be a seminar so that you learn that what you can see the court leader. Now you see a person of his status, very high status, being bundled, having been misadvised by people to behave like that. That is wrong behavior. We are saying, let court that seems to be more aggrieved than the rest and think they are higher than the rest take the legal route first.
But we can't say more aggrieved than the rest, because we have...
they are saying, I'm saying they are saying.
Okay.
I'm saying they are saying, they are more, even the religious bodies have said, IEBC should go. But they have not gone to break, they don't want to push down anniversary towers to fall down. Okay. Take the legal process. At least when you fail, then you say, we tried this, we were blocked. So we are trying the next route. That is one. Two, personalizing IEBC issues actually tells us, is there something bigger that you people are following?
What do you mean by personalizing?
The way they are following it is like Honorable Raila and my classmate Isaac have something personal. You see how Honorable Raila talks. You see how Isaac Hassan talks, the two of them. This one is a perennial loser. Oh, this one is a thief. And then you go back to the clips of your late brother, almost 2.5 years ago. He said these people should go. So you look, there is something personal. It is like there's some failed pact.
That's absolutely
that
wrong.
Prove. And I think in defense of the opposition and those who are calling for IEBC, because it's not just the opposition, there are those who are calling for IEBC to be removed. Yes. There's a genuine concern. And IEBC needs to be seen to be fair.
Yeah, correct. I agree. There I agree 100%. What I disagree with is this violence. Okay. When the law says
there is no violence, and I think Ambrose
let's hear from Moses.
I think it's unfair for Ambrose to mislead the nation. Yes. The right to picket and demonstrate, it goes further to say peaceably and unharmed. I was present on Monday 2 weeks ago when we went to Anniversary Towers. We were unharmed. We were peaceful until the point when police decided to lob tear gas canisters.
As you were breaking down the gate?
No, we were demanding, we want to access the IBC. This is a public office. It is funded by taxpayers' money. So we are players in the electoral process. We've got a right to seek audience and to present petition to the IBC. That is a right. These things where you find Kaiseri saying that we've got plenty of tear gas and we will not hesitate to use it, let him procure enough tear gas to tear gas all Kenyans. Because this is not just an issue of COD. This is not just an issue of elected members of Senate or National Assembly coming from COD. And Ambrose talks of personalization. It is IBC that is attempting to turn this script into a personal issue between them and Raila. Raila is just one of the party leaders who has spoken out against the partiality of IBC. Martha Karua has spoken. Gideon Moi has spoken. These are leaders of parties. Wetangula has spoken. Kalonzo has spoken. The NCCK has spoken.
Why not
Episcopal conference.
Petition.
These other stakeholders can do a petition. For us, we are using the route that we feel is most effective, because when we wanted to reform the electoral process, when we wanted to come up with minimum constitutional amendments that would guarantee that when we go into the next elections, things would be okay, it was sabotaged by Jubilee. And I still maintain that it was sabotaged by Jubilee. Now, Mike, there's this fallacy that Lenaola last week barred us from demonstrating. The court has got no right to withdraw a constitutional provision, a constitutional right. Lenaola made it very clear that proceed, but be peaceful and be unharmed within the law. And that is exactly what we are going to do from here. From here, we are going to demonstrate.
At the end of the day, something will have to give. At the end of the day, looking at it right now, going into the elections as it currently is would really be a recipe for disaster. Given that there are so many areas and people who have bodies that have come out and said that we don't view IEBC as an arbiter who is fair.
I'm telling you, it is only Jubilee, it is only court with their theatrics that they are complicating a very straightforward matter. They can see, you can read when the president speaks, the deputy president, everybody, you can read. They are complicating a very simple matter. They would have simply done a comprehensive petition. Even the diplomatic corps, they told them, you can do it, but avoid violence. They will do a simple petition, setting out the matters. And the matters are there, if you ask me, because it is a question of credibility. It is a question of credibility. And the damage that has been done to the IEBC, they have lost that credibility. So that asking them to leave remains basically following the legal channel. And they will be out. And maybe we will put Moses here as the head of IEBC. We will still campaign, and you see what happens. But what you are doing, going there to break gates and to beat up people, this is what is raising tension in the country and is making people prepare for war which is not necessary. Hassan and his team, even tomorrow, they can just get angry and say, if Raila thinks we are the problem between him and State House, we quit.
It's not about Raila. It's not about Raila. Please, let's not personalize it.
Go and tell your colleagues. Go and tell your colleagues that it is not that difficult. Let them avoid hooliganism. Let them do a petition and let it go to Parliament and to the Senate, debate it. You will be surprised.
Senator, shouldn't the opposition right now be concentrating on how the office bearers of whoever it would be, even if they were to quit, should be vetted and looked at in an integral manner? Because at the end of the day, even like I said earlier, even if we change the faces of the IEBC officials, it doesn't mean that that is going to make them fair. They may still be viewed to be, depending on where they come from and how they're selected. Should we be looking more at how they should be selected? Then we have the push for them to leave, so that now there is a fair way of having them in office that will be fair to everybody.
That's absolutely correct, Mike, because the first schedule of the IBC Act provides for the procedure of selecting or appointing commissioners. And it was written during the Grand Coalition government. And it says the president shall nominate 2 persons to the panel, the prime minister 2 persons, and 3 persons will come from professional bodies. The schedule goes further and says that after following the dissolution of the Grand Coalition government, the nominees of the Prime Minister shall be appointed by the President. So if you are to set up a nominating panel right now to establish a fresh IEBC, the President shall appoint 4 people into that panel, and 3 people shall come from professional bodies. That in itself still presents a problem, because the president is a player. He has declared that he's going to run again.
And he has an interest.
He has an interest. So a situation that gives him 4 members in the nomination panel is a situation that is a little bit lopsided.
Right. You know, which is why I'm asking, why isn't the opposition then concentrating on ensuring that is sorted out, so that it doesn't now again become a potential problem, because we still have the same problem recycling?
Mike, let me take you a little behind. Okoa, Kenya. In the draft bill, we came up with some proposals on how to constitute a panel to establish the commissioners and how to distribute the commissioners on the basis of the strength of political parties. Because at the end of the day, you will never have a commission that that does not, I mean, even if Ambrose Weda was to become the chairman of that commission, there's nothing we can do as Kenyans, because he's a Kenyan, is qualified according to the IBC Act, and I don't think he has held any political party position over the last 5 years. The threshold for becoming a chairman is not that high. So, but we know that Ambrose Weda, even if he was taken to a booth to vote between Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, we will know he'll vote Raila Odinga. So he's got someone, he's got his own preference. So the persons we put in there, all political players need to feel that they represent the strength of political parties at this point. And it might take us back to an IPPG kind of arrangement. In fact, Mike, for me, the best way is not this insistence on what the Constitution says, but we must build sufficient goodwill that once Isaac Hassan and team leave, we come up with a bipartisan political arrangement that is midwifed by political parties, civil society, and religious bodies, and we come up with a formula that is better than the current first schedule of the IBC Act. This is something that I've told my colleagues, that if we just push Isaac Hassan out of office, then tomorrow Ambrose Weda will be the chairman of IBC, or Anne Waiguru, or
then that behooves the country to ask the question, why the push to have them come out when we do not have a reasonable way of having other officers put back? Because like you've mentioned, if we were to have them leave office tomorrow, and the president is the one appointing, and at the same time, as opposed, or rather if you compare it with the current office holders who are selected by the president, Kibaki, and Raila Odinga, and at that time Kibaki had no interest whatsoever because he was leaving office anyway. If anybody had any interest, then it would be Raila Odinga, because he was still seeking to be president. Then if that be the case, why not push to have that sorted out first before we push Isaac Hassan and his team out?
This is just the beginning, and I said that getting the commissioners out is not the end. It is just the beginning. It sends a signal that finally we are serious about reforming the infrastructure of elections in this country. You know, when Jubilee talks about follow the Constitution, that is exactly the corner they want to herd us into. That the Constitution says, bring a petition, then fine, they can even agree to set up a tribunal and send the commissioners home. Then they will tell us the first schedule of the IBC Act gives this power to the president to appoint the new commissioners. That is the corner they're heading us into. They are preparing us for a kichinjio that once these commissioners are out, the president can have his way.
But Senator, what that means then, regardless of whether they leave or not, you will not be satisfied.
No, Mike, I can assure you that there are a lot of conversations that are going on currently. You saw even yesterday, Chepkonga and his Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, there is some discussion that is going on. But this discussion should not be limited to the political class. We want a broad-based discussion where even religious bodies, even civil society, and all these other relevant parties that are interested in the electoral system are involved, so that we come up with a formula that does not place too much power in the hands of one person. But when Jubilee tells us follow the Constitution, that is the corner they want to herd us into, so that once this commission is out, they want to use us as, in fact, they're very happy. They want to use us to kick out this commission, and then they use the powers under IBC Act, the first schedule, to come up with a commission that will not be acceptable to the nation. There would be a huge
contradiction there, because then you're saying Jubilee is using code to kick out the IEBC officers, yet it is code saying that they feel they're biased.
No, Mike, that is exactly what is happening. Didn't you hear what Moses Kuria said? And when Moses Kuria spoke on ICC, everyone started believing him. And this time around, Moses Kuria is saying, even as Jubilee, we don't want these guys. I interact with members of the Jubilee coalition. They're also tired of IBC. But they want some push to come from somewhere to get them out, because they know the first schedule of the IBC Act works in their favor. That is something that we have to amend. So as much as we are pushing for the ouster of the commissioners, we must also have some candid discussions on the process of nominating the commissioners. Because in Okoa, Kenya, we are defined it.
Before the horse, because I think then shouldn't we have that structure of having the new IEBC officers coming in first before we hound them out? Because then we'll have a vacuum.
There is no contradiction in doing them concurrently. There is absolutely no contradiction. I think what is extremely urgent is to have that sense of feeling in this nation that something is happening as far as electoral system reforms are concerned. And the issue of IBC commissioners is an issue of integrity. It is an issue of impartiality. It is an issue of morality. That must be addressed urgently, even as we push for the other legislative changes.
You hear I said that there is something, there's some sinister issues. Now he has revealed it. It's not about removing IEBC. That's why they are going in the streets, because they don't want to follow the law. And he has confirmed. Because CORD have gotten their acts in a topsy-turvy manner, even the process of getting the commissioners, according to the law, requires almost 4 or 5 months. The new commissioners need to settle into the office. To settle, to know which part is Tarakaniti and which part is Homa Bay and which part is Lewa. That they have to do. Then the new commissioners have to win the confidence of Kenyans. Now this, therefore, means if we do not just follow the law, we opt for violence the way they are doing, removing them will take longer.
Violence here is you saying
you will
violence.
see it. You will see it.
According to CORD and according, it's a peaceful protest.
And it's Nkaiseri.
My brother, it cannot be a peaceful process.
The Jubilee minister is promising us
now
tear gas.
look at Halwale. You see, it cannot be.
Is that Halwale firing
it
tear gas?
cannot be a peaceful process when you go into a building owned by the insurance corporation and a gate which has costed them thousands of shillings, and you want to bring it down. Then you say, this is very peaceful.
Yeah, we have some of the cover shots.
Yes. So they have opted, yet the easier one, the peaceful one, is a petition. What have you heard him say? We will not do a petition because we know Jubilee will want to do something. Then you have asked them, do we then change the law? They have no idea whether they want the law to be changed. They keep on harping on Okoa Kenya bill, which they killed themselves. They just didn't get 1 million. You could have realized a popular man. You would have just sat somewhere selling mandazis in Kibera, and he would have gotten 3 million votes. And Okoa Kenya would be there. But he left it to you people, and you people are just hiding in somewhere. So Okoa Kenya bill, gone. What remains? A petition. And then there is no time. You either get your acts in order so that these people are removed, and we put you in there, and then we prepare for elections. Otherwise, it is making the country hot and hot and hot.
Let me come to you, Senator. And one of the statements made by the opposition leader, Raila Odinga, is that should the IEBC not be reconstituted as per what they're requesting, then the opposition would boycott the elections. Which elections exactly would they boycott? Is it presidential? Is it all the elections? And what does that mean exactly?
I am pretty sure that it will not come to that. I am very confident that something will give, and that the national interest will prevail over the personal interest and the egos of the commissioners. Because what we have right now is a competition between the egos of 9 commissioners and the overall national interest. But I can tell you that if there is this grandstanding, if the egos of 9 people are made to prevail, if Jubilee insists on defending the egos of 9 people at the expense of the national interest, the repercussions would be too sad to contemplate. We might not even get to a position where we have elections. There are people who keep saying that they're declaring that there shall never be any more violence in Kenya on account of elections. People like the Deputy President, who went to The Hague over election-related offenses, and thank God the case has been vacated, and we hope that it will not go back there. Peace does not prevail because you dream that it should prevail. Peace prevails because you work for it. You take conscious steps to ensure that peace prevails. You don't just go to a fundraiser and declare that Kenyans will not fight again. What have you done to make sure that Kenyans do not fight again? What mechanisms are you putting in place to ensure that there is cohesion?
Mechanism maybe then is the Constitution. It is there to ensure that we prevail in peace because there is a system of doing things.
The Constitution could be a piece of paper if it is not ingrained in the hearts of the people. The Constitution in itself promotes and advocates for cohesion. But are we doing everything that we can to ensure that there's cohesion between the different communities in this country? Probably not. When leaders from two different communities that have been fighting in the past come together and start doing business and then run government together, we assume that due to the fact that two friends from different communities are working together, everyone else at the bottom is working together. Yet the underlying issues that cause these communities to fight, things like land, things like iniquity in distribution of resources, those things remain unresolved. Things like the fact that you can vote and you feel that your vote does not count. Those are things that we must address. When Raila Odinga talks about boycotting elections, he's probably just being a politician. I think he does not want to contemplate the other implications of going into the next elections with this commission. Because I can tell you, Mike, there'll be chaos. There'll be chaos before the elections.
Well,
and we might not even be in a position to do an election if the grandstanding, the protection of the egos of 9 individuals continues in this country.
All right, Weda, yes. Isn't it interesting? And one of the things that Kalonzo Musyoka said is that it would just be enough to hear the voice of the president regarding this matter. We do know that so far his voice has been, there is a constitutional way to go forward. But looking at some of the people within Jubilee Party, they've said, we also don't want IEBC. Shouldn't the president at this point weigh in and give his opinion of what he feels of the IEBC?
No. First of all, CORD has put Jubilee administration between a rock and a hard place. You do not defend the institutions, they are overrun. Yet you swore, I swear that I will defend, uphold the constitution. In that constitution, there are the institutions which you defend and protect. So the president has to, when he does that, he told you, see, you are defending your friends. So he cannot weigh in as a head of state to say either IB should go or IB should not go. Why? Because there are internal constitutional mechanisms through which such an eventuality can be obtained. If he was to come in, it would be undue influence. It would also almost be equivalent to breach of the same constitution. And the same court will say, you breach this constitution, we want to remove you. So it is clear that the president stays out, and he has done that correctly. But he has said, look, my brothers, read the same constitution. There's a provision. At least let them try and fail first. But they have said they will not try because they know once these commissioners are removed, the powers will vest in the president to eventually appoint these people. What I want to tell you, my brothers, whether or not this country gets a neutral person, we just need God over it. These same commissioners were put in there by mainly Honorable Raila Odinga, with the slight contribution of President Kibaki. President Uhuru was outside. They came and said, you have taken. Even the new commissioners would always be like, you have taken them. Let us look at a situation where we have Kenyans of integrity who would want a country to prosper. What that means, let us follow the law and let us not baptize people too much. This is Jubilee. Jubilee may even say, we want your brother, my classmate TJ Kajwang to be the head of IEBC. And then after that, if you people lose, you will be saying he was bought. He is a mole. Remember, the only elections I remember Honorable Raila Odinga has conceded are 2. The first Kibaki administration, 2002, he said was good, free and fair. The second one was the referendum. Even when I was with him in 97, when we lost very far. But again, he convinced us that the elections were stolen.
Okay.
So I think let us put the country ahead. All right,
I want us to change and move to something else. Maybe your conclusion on that matter, and maybe we seal and move on to something else.
Just to conclude on this matter, when we wanted to get rid of the EACC, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, which had the same safeguards in the Constitution as the IBC, the president did not hesitate. He went ahead and promised ambassadorial positions to the commissioners and sent his cronies to intimidate the commissioners to the point where they had to buckle under pressure and resign. Where there is a will, there is a way. The petition was not even addressed. The guy who brought the petition died a week later, and the wife died 1 week later, under very mysterious circumstances, Jacob Juma style. But what I'm saying is that where there is a will, there is a way. Okay. What we are seeing is lack of will on the part of the president and Jubilee to assure the nation that we can go into the next elections in a fair manner, because they know the last elections, even with the theft, even with the incompetence of the Electoral Commission, they only managed to steal up to 50.05%. And they are afraid that after 5 years in office and after so many failed promises, their theft might not be enough to get them the 50%.
Okay, let's see how it's going to go, because we've seen Isaac Hassan has dug his heels and put his back to the wall and say they're not quitting. The CORD coalition, of course, is leading a group of others who are saying that, no, we're not going to have them in office. Let's move on to something else. And this is the closing of refugee camps, that we have the government saying that they're going to close the Kakuma and the Dadaab refugee camps, which I'd first of all like us to weigh in and hear what the deputy president had to say. And this was soon after the attack that we had in Garissa, and of course there was hue and cry surrounding that, and initially it went down, but now it seems to be a revived conversation where Kenya is saying they can no longer afford to host. And again, this is not just a Kenyan obligation, but one that has been agreed on between Kenya, UN and Somalia. But let's hear what the deputy president had to say first.
Hatusemi Dadaab ifungwe kwa sababu hatuwajali wenzetu wa kutoka kule Somalia. Dadaab imekuwa hapa miaka 20. Hata kama mtu ni mkarimu kiasi gani, akikupatia mahali pa kukaa, kuna muda inaisha.
And let me start with you, Weda, and your comments on that, given that Kenya has a tripartite agreement between UNHCR and Somalia regarding the refugee camps. Would it be legal for us to just close them down?
I think these refugee camps are big business. Big. If you go to Dadaab, it's huge business. But we have a legal international obligation to give a home to people in distress until there is relative calm in areas where they are coming from, or other institutions, other countries are willing to accept them. The situation we have in some of these camps is that they are ever full. People are coming in and it keeps on filling up. Southern Sudan getting independent, there was relative peace up to some time. The refugees who are there, they refused to go back. Somalia, the same story. So that apart from fulfilling our international obligations, we also have local national obligations, which is our own national security. So if you look at the way the refugees issue has turned, it has turned into business. It's no longer a question of helping our own fellow human beings in distress. It is now a business where there are huge NGOs, there are people doing business, and therefore they need the people there. Yet, when you talk to some of the people who are genuinely in there, they want to go to Canada, they want to go to Britain. Canadians are also, where are these people? But they cannot be facilitated because of the business. So there must come a time in the heart, in the life of a nation, where they say, look, we have done 20 years, enough is enough. Nyinyi, go.
Okay. Senator, do you think it's time for Kenya to say that we have done our part, we've hosted them for quite a number of years, and it's no longer sustainable? Although the other question that, of course, is being put here is that the fact that it's a security concern, yet there is no proof that there has been any, security concerns linked directly to the refugee camps.
The statements by Kibicho and Foreign Affairs CS and also the Deputy President brings about 3 reasons as justification for that for the roadside kind of announcement. Mm-hmm. 1, environmental pressure, that Dadaab camp and Kakuma has had significant environmental strain. 2, security, and there's a feeling that many of the terror attacks have been hatched within these camps. Mm-hmm. And 3, financial. But I don't think this is an issue that needs to be decided upon in such a casual manner, because we are talking of 500,000 people, human beings, who have a right to be on this earth. Mm. They have a right to be on this earth, whether they are on the Kenyan side of the earth or the Somali side of the earth. I think that must be the basic underlying principle, and that is a thinking that allows refugees to be hosted by countries. When someone moves from a country that is under strife, they are allowed safe passage and they are allowed to settle in another country. Because at the end of the day, when God created this earth, he did not create these demarcations of Kenya and Somalia. So it would be unfair to let 500,000 people go into a war zone simply because of some colonial demarcations. But Mike, I think in as much as this is a subject that deserves to be discussed in a comprehensive and exhaustive manner, as we discuss the repatriation of refugees back to Somalia, we must also lay on the table Kenya's war in Somalia and our strategy to bring our boys back home. If we had that conversation, then the nation would be convinced that KDF, our Kenyan boys, went into Somalia, they've pacified the nation is now at peace, and it is in a situation where the refugees can go back home and Kenyans can come back home. But whenever we raise issues, whenever we attempt to provoke discussion on the issue of Kenya's occupation of Somalia, we are told that we are not being patriots. We are told that we are being Al-Shabaab's greatest supporters. If we go ahead and take these people back to Somalia, a country that is insecure, aren't we just handing them straight into the hands of Al-Shabaab? I think this is not an issue that should be discussed that casually. Of course, there are the international treaties that Kenya is a signatory to, so it cannot be an issue that Ruto talks about in a fundraiser where he's taking brown envelopes. There needs to be some serious thought to this, but it has to go hand in hand with the discussion of our role and involvement in Somalia. Okay. South Sudan also, it is just last week that Riek Machar and Salva Kiir decided to sit together and work together. It has not been tested. And you know, we know the history of South Sudan. It would be extremely unfair for the people who just ran away from South Sudan just the other day to seek refuge in Kenya to be sent back into the hands of the people who wanted to kill them in the first place. I think we need to be much more serious. The three reasons, environmental, security, and financial, are not strong enough. I think they are mitigating factors that can be developed.
Yes, I think it's a tragedy that a senator in a big country like Kenya does not understand what it means to have a refugee status. A refugee status is like you are in transition. You have left your country, you don't have another country. You are in distress, so you are given a position. It is not like a birth certificate. The refugees you are talking about are actually grandchildren. Most of them are grandchildren or great-grandchildren. It doesn't
remove the fact that if their country is not safe, they cannot go back.
Let me just explain. So that status gives you a temporary reprieve as you are processed back into normalcy. How are you processed back into normalcy? Some people, when their countries settle, you are taken back. Some people are taken to other countries. Some people, like in Kenya, you come and after you have stayed their constitutional provisions, you apply to be a Kenyan citizen. Then you, from that status, because the refugee has certain rights and obligations. Now, once you apply to be a Kenyan and you are processed and you become a Kenyan, you are removed from the list of offices and you enjoy certain privileges. Now, there are a number of people, the great-grandchildren of refugees, they are benefiting from that position, and therefore they don't want to go forward, they don't want to come backwards. That is where the problem is. The problem is not about people who are from Southern Sudan or from Somalia. Some of these people came when the regime of Siad Barre fell.
And they're still in the country.
They're still in the country, claiming to be. So you need to understand as a legislator that it is a legal situation that needs to be corrected. It cannot go on like that forever.
I think, to be fair to...
And it is not connected to the war.
To be fair to Ambrose, thank you for informing the public, because I already have that information that you're passing. But whether you look at the immigration crisis in Europe, now, if you are going to argue that these people then should be sent to Europe or to the US, let other countries take their fair share, when they are already when they are already suffering, buckling under pressure of illegal immigrants coming out of Northern Africa, coming out of the Arab world, I mean, that's just being in a fantasy land. What we need to do, and particularly for the refugees coming out of Somalia, because they are the greatest bulk. There's no law in Somalia. as we discuss the issue of refugees, let us also discuss the issue of our occupation in Somalia. Because as Ambrose says, a refugee status is not permanent. And also, Kenya's presence in Somalia cannot be permanent. Otherwise, it will be colonization. Let us have a national discourse and say that this is our timelines for pacification of Somalia, whether we are creating a buffer, so that we create that buffer and create a conducive environment for these 25-year-olds to go back to their home country.
Gentlemen, we'll have to wind it up right there. Thank you very much, Bruce Weda, who is a lawyer, and Senator Moses Kajwang, who is a senator for Homa Bay County. Thank you. We'll have to wind it up right there on the way it is. And let me just read a few comments that have come through. Benjamin Muvengi says that what surprises me is that Matsanga has failed to stitch his own governance in Uganda, but he pretends to fix ours. Okay. Peter Santoni,
look like
Parliament way to bring tyranny of numbers, which will be unfair. Let the officials resign. And we have Ngoma Nzito, who says that just a word of advice to CORD as they go to IEBC offices, let them register in mass as voters. Okay. We have Frida Motanya, who says, okay, she's just lightened, expressed her. Kajwang first resign as senator, and others also, and will support the resignation of IEBC. Final comment that I can read this morning, Vincent Ouma, who said CORD is engaged in a misguided exercise. Let them use Constitution 2010 to make sure that IEBC is removed. That's why we'll have to wind up the way it is this morning, but do stay with us. We've got some news updates coming up very shortly, and also our sports chat with Robin Toskin is lined up for you right here on Morning Express.